You've landed inside Launch Street, the Business Innovation Podcast, where we interview top innovators out there shaking things up so you can innovate, differentiate, and get further faster. Since you're here, we know you're the type of person that recognizes the importance of unlocking your innovation advantage so you can compete and win. And now, your host, the person that has worked with leading companies like Disney, Procter & Gamble, Aero Electronics, the U.S. Army Research Labs, and Red Robin on upping their innovation advantage. Tamara Gontor.
What's up, innovators? Tamara here. I'm super excited for today's interview for so many reasons, but mostly because I went and implemented some of our guests' leadership techniques immediately. So before we get there, I just want to remind us all that if you have a question, a scenario, a challenge, something that you want advice on, let me know. Here's the thing. If you are dealing with it, so are others. And sometimes hearing someone else's perspective and ideas is helpful in sparking more ideas and solutions in yourself too. So when I have juicy innovation for you, I go live and I do these bursts of innovations where I dig into a topic or answer questions. So get your innovation question to me. And if you can join me live for the answer, great. If not, we'll post a recording as well so you can see it there. Oh, and you do need to be in our community to even get the notifications when I go live. So make sure you are. You can do that on our website. But let's get those questions out there. Okay, today's interview is a fascinating conversation about seeing opportunities, leadership, and culture. Greg Koberger is the founder of ReadMe. They make APIs, which for those of us not in the tech world, think of them as like the bridge between one system to the other system in a tech world so things can work and integrate and talk. So he makes those things, those bridges, those APIs, easy for millions of people and companies like Lyft and Trello to build awesome products. So we dig into how he realized this massive gap in the tech world and then how he went after turning that gap into a business. Then we dive deep into leadership and culture, including his startup escape rooms, challenge coins, and no guilt productivity policy. Let's dig into it.
Greg, thank you so much for joining me today. I can't wait to dig into some areas of your expertise and experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
So since it's the first time getting to know each other, what's the one thing people would be surprised to learn about you?
Ooh, okay. I think that, so hopefully it doesn't bias people too much, but, as we go on, I hope we talk a lot about like the creative things I've done, the interesting things and all that. So the juxtaposition is that I went to a military school growing up, and people are always really surprised to hear that I kind of, was doing all the military stuff. And, I was in school, so it wasn't like we were doing actual military stuff. It was just marching around and doing, inspection and wearing, uniforms and all that stuff. But considering how I'm the exact opposite now, I think a lot of people are always really surprised when they hear that my background was growing up. I went to a military school.
So I just have to know, though, do you think that doing that has led or given you any abilities or skills around structure or goal setting or other areas that maybe you wouldn't have had otherwise?
Ooh, probably to a certain extent. I think so. I mean, it was a school, so it wasn't like it was actually in the military.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff around like, getting up early and making sure that, your belt was shined and stuff like that. And to a certain extent, I don't know if I learned from it as much as I rejected that. I'm not exactly a morning person.
You're like, I'm not making my bed.
Yeah, exactly. So I wonder if it's a little less that I kind of learned stuff and more that I, just kind of went the opposite way. I was like, this is not for me. But I mean, so a lot of the stuff, like we did take a lot of classes, and the classes were less about, how to shoot a gun and more about leadership and stuff like that. And I do think that kind of did help a lot. I think my brand of leadership is very, very different than the military's brand. I run a company, and my brand of leadership is very much, as hopefully we'll talk about, is kind of, trusting in people and letting them make their own decisions and encouraging them. And that's not exactly, how the military works. So yeah, I don't know if it's as much as that, but there are some core things that are the same, such as like, a lot of stuff about integrity and things like that I think did really help. So I would say that, I got some core stuff out of it. But then most of my past 20 so years have been kind of rejecting a lot of the stuff around that.
Well, I will tell you, I am surprised just having dug into your history and what you do and kind of some of the things we're about to talk about. So thank you for sharing that. I am mildly surprised, which is hard to do. So,
nice.
before we dig into this kind of the startup escape and there's other things I really want to talk to you about, I do have a question for you around your business, ReadMe and APIs.
Yes.
Part of the reason I wanted to ask you this question is I think that a lot of great innovation, and whether that's a way to do your work smarter, not harder, a new product, a new business, a new marketing strategy, whatever it is often starts with a frustration for something that you see that is wrong. But I think more often than not, what most of us do is we have that frustration and then we kind of shrug it off and move on. We're like, well, that's annoying anyway, right? Like something I have to live with.
Yep.
But you had a massive frustration around APIs. And if you could explain a little bit about what that is, just to make sure I know what it is, but let's just make sure everybody knows.
Of course.
I'm curious about your frustration and what you did.
Yes. So APIs, to really kind of simplify it, are any two companies, whether they're two, cool tech companies or two gigantic companies, anytime they share data between each other, they use something called an API, an application programming interface. It's basically a loosely structured way. It's like a website almost that you can go to. It looks like a URL, like you type it in as api.google.com/whatever, and it looks like a URL. And the data that comes back, though, isn't pretty. It's in a format called JSON or XML or something like that, which is structured so that the other computer can read it. And the whole point is a way to make actions happen, get data, basically a standardized way for two different companies to work together. And they should be incredibly simple. This is where the frustration comes in. They should be not incredibly simple, but it's not a complicated topic.
It's a bridge,
concept.
Basically, right?
Yeah.
Between one system to the next.
But the problem is that somehow it's become so incredibly complicated. Like getting an API to use is really complicated. And then once you've built your API, helping other people learn how to use it is incredibly complicated as well. And I think there's this mentality that, and it's true to a certain extent, that developers are very good at figuring things out. So you build an API, another developer has to use it, and developers are really good at figuring things out. So I don't think that there's been a lot of kind of love in the past historically put into, taking a look at these APIs and being like, oh, we're going to make this a really nice experience. If you look at things like, I don't know, any other big tech company you know about, whether it be Facebook or Uber or Airbnb, they put so much thought and love into usability, design, making it feel good. And those are the companies that win. There's a lot of comparators to like Airbnb, but Airbnb is just beautiful and easy to use and accessible and all that. And no one really thought that for APIs, because APIs are used by developers. Developers inherently, they're good at figuring things out. And I think that there's two things that have kind of coalesced for me that have made ReadMe so far successful, and in the future hopefully much more successful as we ride this kind of tailwind, which is I've been frustrated and I've known for a long time that developers can figure things out, but they don't want to. They want to do other things, but they have the ability to, so they will if they have to. So I've been frustrated by this for a while. Like I first had the, call it frustration back in 2008 when I was working my first startup, and I kind of brushed it off and forgot about it. And then my next job, it came up again. And then, I did a job interview. I was working at Mozilla, or I was going to work at Mozilla, and I did a job interview, and the manager the hiring manager asked me, where do you want to be in 5 years? And I talked about how I'd love to start a company, and he was like, oh, what do you want to do? And like, this just popped into my mind. It's like my biggest frustration that I wanted to solve. And like, that was 2010. And then, 2012, I tried to get funding for it and didn't work out. I kept coming back to it and just, and the thing that kind of like
couldn't let it go.
Exactly. And it wasn't like, it's a first world problem. It's not the biggest thing that bothers me, of course, but it was the biggest thing that I felt like I could actually make a meaningful impact on. And the thing that also really helped me was the way that the type of people who use APIs that have changed, for better or for worse, but like, there was one type of person that was using an API 10 years ago, and it was a CS student. It's like someone who had a CS degree, a computer science degree, something like that. But that's changed. Now the tech literacy has expanded so much that, first of all, people who are programmers aren't necessarily fit in the same mold they always had. And secondly, there's so many people who are semi-technical. Like, I know that you aren't a programmer, but you've gone to like computer school and all that, and kind of like are technically literate. And that describes so many people. And I think that I've kind of hit this like perfect timing where lots and lots and lots of people want to build on top of APIs. They want to use, the Dropbox API to do something interesting, or they want to use the Lyft API to do something interesting, or they want to like get their data from one place to another. And you don't have to be a programmer fully employed as a programmer at a company to use an API anymore. You just want to be like, you're technically literate and you want to accomplish something.
The user's actually changing. So they're less they're less back-end and technically savvy.
Yep.
So they need the usability and the simplicity, but the market hence expanded like greatly, right? To whole new sets of people like me, to your point, who were never going to dig into the code, but we need the bridges.
Exactly. And just making it dead simple for anyone who knows a little bit of JavaScript or Python or HTML to do something really cool with APIs. Like we've hit this like kind of, if I'd started this company back in 2008, I don't think it would have gone well. Partially because I just wasn't ready to do it, but also partially because
the market wasn't actually ready.
Exactly.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. So I have a lot of things I want to dig in with you today, but you had said in the very beginning about like, getting into your leadership style and kind of the success of ReadMe. And I think the things we're going to talk about are actually really conversations about leadership, although they're kind of tangible things, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah. And so the first thing I want to talk to you about is Startup Escape, which you created after seeing the success of escape rooms, which I love. They're so much fun. But first of all, tell us about what a startup escape is, because it is a little bit different than kind of the traditional escape room.
Yeah, kind of. So I have a company with a bunch of employees, as we just talked about, like a real company. And we do offsites a lot. We go to different cities, and it's sometimes hard to find things to do. Sometimes we used to do a lot of like bars or stuff like that, or we used to do a lot of just like, work stuff. But there's this like gap of things where I want something fun for us to do that didn't have to involve alcohol and didn't have to involve, doing work. And it's kind of hard to find something that's not cheesy as well. And
totally, like a trust fall or something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess you could argue that escape rooms are a little cheesy, but bear with me on this.
But still fun.
Yeah, they're still fun. And it's not, it's very contrived, but it's not contrived in the sense that like, people actually on my team enjoy doing them. Yeah. And, I had been, I was dating someone and we did a bunch of escape rooms together. And then I was like, oh, I should have my team do this with me. And, so at the first offsite that we did escape rooms, people really liked them. And it just became a thing that as a company we did. We just did escape rooms every offsite. We did them, we're based in San Francisco. We did them here a lot. And I was in doing a bunch of escape rooms, and I was talking to my partner at the time, and we were like, just kind of brainstorming, like, wouldn't it be really cool to build, an escape room ourselves? And like, I think a lot of people have done escape rooms and like thought it'd be cool to build one. But I got this thing in my mind where I was like, okay, we're in San Francisco. I love startups. It's perfectly themed to kind of build a escape room that's startup themed. So it's, it's still an escape room at the end of the day. The difference is that, mine's called Startup Escape. And it looks like a startup. It feels like a startup. Like it's very like cliche. If you watch like Silicon Valley,
it feels best like show that. Ever.
And it's exactly like it's a, I don't know if you would say Silicon Valley is a loving parody, but for me, it's a loving parody in the sense that like, I just really love the creativity that happens in startups. And like, if you go into my escape room, it's, there's posters on the wall with motivational quotes. And like, of course, those are clues. There's like brick walls, and like, it just looks like a cliche startup. You actually start in a garage, like every good startup does. Yeah. And it's the whole thing is like, and there's 5 tracks. There's programming, design, IT, marketing, and product. And you don't need to know how to do any of those things, but like I crafted the clues and the things like that to be, for programming, the clues are very logical and they feel like programming, even though you're not actually programming. For design, you're actually like using a Wacom tablet or Wacom tablet, or however you pronounce that. And you're drawing things. And like I tried to make each individual parallel track feel very much like, that in spirit, at least the part of the startup. And, a lot of people come from startups to do it because they spend all day in these cliche startups, and they're like, oh, it'd be fun to mock it. Some people come from big companies because they like to like see what, startup stuff's kind of like and all that. And it was just a fun side project that I built. It's a real business that exists in physical space. It's in San Francisco. And, but I've gotten thousands of companies come through it. Like every single startup that you've heard of, like every single like company has done it. And, it was just a really cool way to meet people and to build something. Mostly for me, it was less about the money and more about just kind of building something I've like been wanting to build for a while.
So I get the fun part of it, right? The collaborate. I mean, escape rooms are kind of cool, or startup escape too, because you learn there's some collaboration and creative problem solving and all that. I'm curious though, what do you think people learn in participating kind of beyond that superficial, like it's fun, we collaborated, we get to learn what a startup's like or mock it, whichever place you're coming from. Because I think there's a lot more to those experiences.
Yeah, I think there's two levels. One I think is a legitimate thing to talk about, and the other we'll see if I can make my case for.
We'll see if it flies.
Yeah, exactly. The first is you said collaboration. I think that it's just really good because they put pressure on escape rooms. You only have an hour, and of course it's contrived. Nothing happens bad if you don't get out, but like you have an hour, and I think that it's really. Sports teams get that. But other than that, there's not a lot of like this kind of teamwork under some sort of powder keg. One of the things really interesting. So I did Y Combinator. For people who don't know, it's this incubator in San Francisco that a ton of startups go through. And they do this interview, and it's a 10-minute interview. And the thing that's interesting to me about it is that they don't sit down and casually like ask you how things are going and all that. They have 10 minutes, and that's not a lot of time. We've probably been talking for significantly more than that.
Yeah.
And you have to explain your entire business. And they're really good at kind of just like talking over you and like kind of just really pushing you. Their whole point is that they create this like powder keg in 10 minutes, and they're trying to kind of like stress you out a little bit or like confuse you or throw you off just a little bit. And it's like you said, it's very, or like I said, it's very contrived, but the whole point is like, it's kind of like a microcosm of a company, which takes not 10 minutes, but 10 years to build. But they kind of like want to see if they can knock you off or like,
how easily you're rattled.
Yeah. Like if in 10 minutes, these people can get you to question, because they're not being nice. They're not being mean, but they're very good at narrowing on that one question that, you don't want them to ask, and then, doubling down on that.
Right. Yeah.
And if you can't get through that, you don't have a good answer for it. But if you can't get through that without being like really rattled or being like, oh, maybe you're right, this isn't a good idea, then how are you going to survive 10 years? And I think that escape rooms can be very much like that with a team where like you're under pressure, and like there's been times where like I've done stuff in escape rooms and I'm like, oh, that's just can't do that anymore. Not just in escape rooms, but like, in life with my team. Just like, the way you communicate with people. And of course it's never intentionally mean or intentionally like fast paced or anything like that, but it's it's
how you behave under pressure.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's a really cool way to kind of like work together. And like, I'm proud to say that my team's very good at escape rooms because we just work really well together. And I know some people at my escape room that I've built come with candidates because it's a really good way in an hour to see how they work with other people. Like, are they selfish? Are they good problem solvers? Are they creative? Are they, under pressure, do they get angry and lash out? In an interview, a job interview, everyone's able to be the best versions of themselves. But like once there's a little bit of pressure, sometimes people change. And so I know a lot of people who do escape rooms, probably partially so they can expense having fun for an hour, but also because it's a good way to kind of test people. And the second thing is, and this is where I, we'll see if this is actually true or not, or whatever. But like the thing I love about escape rooms is that I don't really love puzzles per se. Like I don't like Sudokus I don't dislike them, but I don't do them often. And the thing I like about escape rooms is that if you've done them, for people who haven't done them, you go into this room and it doesn't look like a puzzle. It looks like a normal room. There's no obvious things. No one hands you a crossword and says, go for it. And you have to figure out first what the puzzle is and then solve it. And I think it does a really good job of helping people think about things from a different perspective. Again, this is where I might fall apart my argument here, but it's because it's a little contrived. But you look at a bunch of motivational posters in my room, for example, and they aren't motivational posters. There's a bunch of clues in them. You have to figure out what those clues are. And I really like how it gets people to look at things from a different perspective and think about things in a new way. And I don't know if that translates once, the buzzer sounds and the escape room's over, but at least for me, building the escape room was really nice to kind of, work backwards. And I, at the very least, kind of was able to think about things in different ways. Like, oh, this, we can use a Snapchat filter for something interesting. Or like these t-shirts don't have to just be swag t-shirts. They can have a clue in them. And we can do something creative with it and things like that. So those are my two answers.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with the second one. And I was just kind of sitting here thinking about a couple things. One is I was thinking when you were talking about candidates, I was thinking about what a great opportunity too, if you, whatever your values are at your company, your list of values, hopefully they're more than just a plaque on the wall for not you personally, Greg, but in general for people.
Yes.
I think seeing those values in action in a tight space like that could probably show you what's happening in the workplace, particularly as you get bigger and you don't have necessarily one-on-one interaction with everybody all the time,
Yeah.
so you don't see it as much. But like, I think about some of our values being, curiosity, being hungry,
Yep.
and teamwork, or like, supporting the team. I bet in that environment, you would see amplified, and you would know if
Yep.
you like how people are doing. I could probably have a really great conversation around it with both candidates, but I think also with people who've worked for you for a while. And the other thing I'd say is, in what you were talking about with your second answer, is, so I did an escape room here in Denver with my team. And one of the things I realized about myself is sometimes, even though I'm in innovation and my whole thing is thinking differently, I do that, but every now and again I'll get stuck. Like, that should be the way it works.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one clue that I just got stuck on that I was like, that should be the way it works. And it wasn't. It just was not.
Yep.
I needed to look at something differently. And it took me a minute to rattle myself out of that. But you learn great lessons about how you, to your point, do or don't think differently. And how you might maybe, the other thing someone on my team kept doing was overcomplicating the solution.
Yep.
At the end of the day, the solutions, right, are typically pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
But someone on my team kept overcomplicating it. But what was cool about it was the after conversation we had about the experience and what we noticed about ourselves. And that's when we kind of learned lessons. And those are the ones where literally 2 weeks later, I found myself going, I'm stuck on this path. I need to move on. It's not working. I need to move on.
And for me, like as a leader, to build off that exactly, like I've had times where I'm in an escape room, like I know how to do this and it's complicated. And then someone on my team will come up and be like, oh, it's this. And I'm like, whoa, like I was just so confident that I had the right answer and it didn't even occur to me that I was wrong.
Right.
And like, that's true about work too. Like there's so many, like, when you're, a leader or like running a company and things like that, like you have a lot of preconceived notions and a lot of like things. And like, it's really good to take a step back and be like, listen to other people who might have a much simpler way around it. Because it's very easy to get things right, but it's also very easy to get things wrong, overcomplicate it, just somehow get led down this path. And fresh eyes with creativity are sometimes, invaluable.
Well, and I love what you said about the motivational posters looking like nothing but actually being clues, because I think that's a great lesson in life about sometimes the resources that we have or what's accessible to us is more than we think it is. Because we ignore stuff like motivational posters. I have a vision of like the cat hanging off the tree branch kind of motivational posters from like the cheesy ones from the 80s. How important do you think is in a startup escape and then ultimately to work, how important is collaboration and innovation? And I'm really defining innovation by, I think, what you said also earlier, which is about like thinking differently about what's in front of you.
Yeah. I mean, this is where, like I said, my stuff kind of falls flat because I think it's very easy to be creative when it calls for it. When you're in an escape room, you know that you're supposed to be solving puzzles and being proactive and figuring things out. I think that, this is where it falls apart, is that I think it's very easy to walk away from the escape room and just go back to the way you normally are. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can't always be creative. You can't always like be on and all that. But I think that it's kind of like affordances, for example, is like the usability term for it. Like when you see a, door handle, it's pretty obvious how to turn it and things like that. And I think, we don't tend to often bring that creativity unless we're prompted to, which is kind of unfortunate. I've been working really hard to break out of that. And I think I have over the past few years. I'm pretty okay with it. But, for example, I don't think that, people are going to do an escape room and all of a sudden it's like, doing one of those like drugs that people do where like it changes the way you think forever. Like I don't think an escape room's like that.
It's
I think
not peyote or whatever it's
exactly,
called.
Yeah. I feel like unfortunately when you leave an escape room, you're like, well, that was fun. And you go back to your normal life. At least for most people. And that's okay. Like it's, same as if you go to like, Disney World and it's a ton of fun and then you leave and like, you don't take that with you. It was just you were in Disney World and you were allowed to be a kid and have fun. And then you walk away and like, you're like, oh, that was, put that back back in the box, that part of me. But I do think, so as far as like this creativity and, I do think that one of my biggest advice to people is, much like escape rooms, you don't always have to answer the question the way it's being asked. And what I mean by that is with escape rooms, they look very straightforward, but like I said, these, the plant that is in the escape room isn't actually a plant. Like there's something special about it. Or like the books aren't just like on the wall. There's actually a hidden code in it. And I think, the ability to kind of look at something and be like, what can I actually do with this is such a great skill. When I say like, you don't have to answer the question that's being asked, I mean, if someone's asking you to like, if you're applying for a job and it's like, what are your 3 biggest strengths? The worst that you can say is like, well, I'm very prompt. You can kind of like, no one has ever been upset about someone for going above and beyond and doing something creative or interesting, and taking it and making it their own. Make a movie about it, or like a short film, or like, refuse to answer the question because you want to talk about something completely different. Like do anything to kind of stand out and be creative. Because I think all too often we just kind of do what we're told to do, and we don't feel like we can kind of like, inject our own innovation, our own creativity into it. And 99% of the time you just have to do it. You have to answer the question that's being asked, and you have to do things the proper way. But, for example, if at work, if I ask someone to do something, if they come back and are like, I don't want to do exactly that because I know what you're getting at, and I think there's a better path. Like that's phenomenal. I love that. I've never said no to someone who
it's like
comes
the best. That's like music to a leader's ears, right there.
Exactly right.
Yeah. Well, just really quickly to what you're saying, I'd say that what really resonates for me is, and for Launch Street out there listening, is, the question is the path you go down. And so if you get stuck, if you don't challenge the question to begin with, you've pushed yourself down one path, whether you like it or not, without realizing it. And I think oftentimes we're actually, and I'm guilty of this, we're all guilty of this, we're actually asking the wrong question. And we have to stop and think about, is this really the question I want to be even answering or solving? And is that question I'm being asked the one I really want to tackle? And I will tell you, it's funny that you mentioned the 3 strengths. I was interviewing and I had all these candidates, and I think one of my questions was, what are your 3 strengths? I don't ask anymore because it's a lame question in my opinion, but I used to.
Oh, I'm sorry that I kind of mocked you a little bit for your question.
No, you're welcome to mock me. It's a ridiculous question. But one candidate, I never forget, I said, what are your 3 strengths or 5 strengths, whatever I said. And they said, I'd really rather not talk about it. I'd rather talk about how you benefit, how my strengths have added value to the companies I've worked for.
Yep.
And I thought that person got the job, and everybody else, I have no idea what they told me. Like that was brilliant. Brilliant. And it was exactly what you said. They actually took control and said, well, I'm not answering that question. I'm answering this one instead.
Yeah. And like, there's this article that I love, and I'm going to get this wrong, but I think it's called something like How to Say Nothing in 500 Words. And this is a really old article, and it's walking through how to say nothing in 500 words. And the premise of this article is, okay, you're in school and your teacher says, write 500 words about whether or not you think college football should be a thing or something like that. And the whole point is like, everyone's gut reaction is to write, yes, I think so, or no, I don't think so because. Right. And their point is like, look at your teacher. The teacher's going to sit there and they're going to read 500 of these or 50 of these or 20 of these. And if you're like, yes, I believe that college football should be a thing because it creates school spirit, that your teacher, she'll have read 4 of these already, the exact same thing. And he's like, okay, like write down the top 10 things that come to mind and then cross them all out. Like, he's like, take the thing, like answer the question the opposite way that you think. Say something like absolutely crazy that makes no sense. And then make an argument for it, because you're not trying to convince, your teacher isn't trying to decide whether or not college football should be a thing or not. Your teacher's trying to just, they're just literally at this point, actually, they're just trying to get through the day and, read through 50 papers. And like, they don't really care if your idea is good or not. They just want you to show creativity and something interesting and say something that like no one's ever said before. And I think that's such an important, like that stuck with me. Like I read resumes every single day for people. And
doesn't it
zero of them stand out?
Fork in your eye? Yeah.
Like just do something weird. Be like, my resume is, I don't have a resume, but I have this. Or like, if you're like a bio and like a cover letter, like nothing's worse to me than a dear sir, my name is so-and-so. Like,
dear sir or ma'am.
Yeah. Whereas like, that's even worse. Like, it's just like, just do something weird or creative that stands out. Like, my sister applied for a job at a company that does like photo sharing stuff. And she was like working on her resume. I was encouraging her, like, just do something weird. Like they're a photo sharing thing. Like, do something with photography. Like just do something that stands out. It doesn't matter what it is. Just do something that stands out. And, and she got the job and stuff. And like, I crave anytime anyone does something that just stands out.
It's I'm laughing about a few things. I'll have to. So first of all, let me just say that I 100% agree with you. And I think in today's competitive world, you have to be different, right? Better is not enough. And I always talk about it as the ER trap. It's like better or stronger or faster. That's what the college or the essay about college football is, or resumes. It's like, I'm just going to be a little bit better. I'm going to have a cleaner resume with a couple more bullet points. And that's not enough to stand out. You have to do it differently, and different wins, I think, today, without a doubt. And I will tell you, you read a lot of resumes. I read a lot. My team and I both read a lot of requests to be on this podcast. And 99% of the time, I gloss over the minute I start them. And we got one. It was actually from a PR agency, but we get a lot of those too. But this one PR agency crushed it. And his email was visual and totally different than everybody else's. And not only did we have his guest on, and they got noticed, we've had multiple guests from him on, but also we're now going to use them for our PR when my book comes out, because they were brilliant in how they approached us. And all because instead of saying, how do we do this better and more professional, they said, let's do it different, because I bet they get a lot of them.
Yep.
It was brilliant.
Yeah. And it's both so easy and so incredibly hard to do something like that. It's so easy in the sense that I don't know what they did, but I'm sure it didn't take, like, it wasn't like an insane amount of work or something insanely crazy or anything like that. It was just different. And it's really hard to like, I go back to that like Apple commercial, 1984 Apple commercial, where like it wasn't in 1984, I don't think, or maybe it was, but
no, it's mid 80s somewhere.
Mid 80s, yeah, where they like threw the woman's running through and like throws the hammer through the glass. Like, I don't think that life is like that even remotely, but even Apple doesn't think that life is like that. Like that's just a dramatic, memorable kind of like boiling down of what it's like. And it's amazing like how like some of the things that I've done that like no one asked me to do that were just like weird or different that have like opened so many doors for me. And how many people that are in my life now because they did something a little weird or a little off or a little different.
Totally.
And I love them for it. And like they start off on such a good foot. And like my opinion, I think yours is probably very similar, is that like it's not worth doing anything unless you're going to do it new or do something different or creative. And sometimes it gets exhausting because you just want to like, just do things a normal way once in a while. But like,
it's my justification for naps, Greg, because everything I do takes so much mental capacity.
Yeah, that's fair. It's really fair.
But you're absolutely right. And I mean, I think like you, I personally crave different and new and disruptive all the time. It's just how I'm wired. But I also think that today is so cluttered that you have to. And I was reading this article, it was I can't remember if it was Fast Company or Inc., talking about there's 5 generations in the workforce for the first time. And that means that the competition, forget the business level for a minute, talk about personal level. The competition to stand out and maintain relevance in your own job is much bigger. The pressure is much stronger than it's ever been. And our irrelevancy cycle, I hate to say this, but it's the reality. It used to be something like you became irrelevant when you hit your 60s. Now it's in their early 40s.
Yeah.
So at least that's when the pressure starts. So we have to start thinking about how to be different and meaningful from out of the gate. We can't wait for like, to your kind of what you were saying earlier about we wait for those moments where we're pushed to be innovative. We can't wait. We have to start thinking like that all the time.
Yep.
So now that we've on that soapbox, I'm going to keep us going because that was great, but I could keep talking about that. But the next thing I wanted to ask you about was challenge coins.
Yeah.
So first of all, explain what they are.
Okay. Actually, I didn't know you were going to ask me this, and this is a weird harken back to what I started out with. So challenge coins come from the military. And
and you said you didn't learn anything, that you took something.
Okay. I took something from this.
Yeah.
So challenge coins are from the military, and the whole point, it's a little outdated, or obviously now it's outdated, but at the time, 100 years ago or whatever, they would hand out these challenge coins, these like minted coins. And the whole point would be like, let's say that, I'm at a bar and I'm bragging about like, I was in this battalion, and someone could challenge me and I would have to like show my coin as proof. And the whole point is, it was kind of a game where if someone challenges me and I don't have my coin to prove it, then I have to buy them a drink. But if I can prove it, they have to buy me a drink. And then there's also this thing where like, if you take your challenge coin out and like hit it on the table, everyone has to like show their, if you're like with a group of people who have a challenge coin, they have to show their challenge coin. If someone doesn't have it on them, they have to buy a round for the table,
Yeah.
and vice versa. If everyone has it, then you have to buy a round for everyone else. So it was kind of just this like, I'm sure it actually did start as like a real like, oh, here's proof that you were, part of this battalion or whatever. But like it became this game. And like even now with presidents, whenever someone from the military will meet a president, they tend to give the president the challenge coin just because it's a meaningful thing. Or if like someone dies, the challenge coin will be given to someone. Like it's kind of just become this like this thing. So like presidents will have thousands of challenge coins because people give it to them, and I kind of like something about it. And then the guy named Jon Favreau, who from he was Phoebe's boyfriend in Friends.
Yeah,
rich
I knew
guy.
the name sounded familiar. Yep.
Yeah, but like that's not even how he's most famous. He also did The Lion King and The Jungle Book, and he's like also Iron Man. He was the first person to make a Marvel movie. He's a great director as well, and he took it from the military and he gives it to every single person who works on one of his movies. So if you were to work on Lion King, whether you're Beyonce or you are the person who is working at the craft
sweeping
table,
up after the editing floor. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
that it works like that anymore.
It doesn't really matter. You get a challenge coin. And like, I kind of really liked that like acknowledgement of, Beyonce makes a little bit more money than the person who's sweeping up the cutting room floor. But I really like this acknowledgement of like, we're all in this together and everyone did something to contribute. And like, so I started doing it a few years ago where this was actually back before I had many employees. I would give it to people who made a difference in the company. So they didn't actually have to be employees, but they gave me, they were investors, or they gave me advice that like really pivoted the company, or they were there for me when I really needed them, or they like helped out in some unique way that I couldn't have like built my company without them. And it was just my way of like, some people get thanked by me with a salary. Some people get thanked, and I shouldn't use the word thanked. I don't mean it that way, but like some people get a salary, or they get, equity, or they get other stuff. But there's so many people that have gone into helping my company that I wanted a way to say thank you and acknowledge these people. And so I got these challenge coins made up and they're numbered. So like I'm number one, I'm chronologically number one. And, number two would be the first person that helped me all the way up. And it was just kind of my way of like acknowledging and thanking people who have worked to help my company in varying degrees. Like as time has gone on, the bar has gone higher because we have more employees. A little bit of advice isn't as, life shattering for me anymore. So like the bar has gone up a little bit, but it's just kind of my way of like saying thank you to people. And it's kind of caught on a little bit. Like a few startups that I know have started to do it. I think anyone should do it. It's actually surprisingly cheap to do. There's so many websites on just like Google Challenge Coin, and they're all for the military. It's not a like startup thing at all or a tech company thing, but it's just become my thing that I've started to do. And I just, it's such a nice way to kind of say thank you in a unique way that no one expects. And I really like doing it.
So how do you think, I get the one-on-one recognition. Like if you gave it to me, I'd be like, oh my God, like I feel so special. Mm-hmm. Do you think that it also helps create a more cohesive culture or more cohesive team?
Oh, 100%. Like it's just kind of it's literally you're carrying around a little thing that like is entrance into this club. And I don't think it's the only thing that builds a culture, obviously, but I do think that there's, we also put the people's names on the website. Actually, that might not be true right now, but we just launched a new website. I don't think we got to that page yet, but if you go to readme.com/credits, and I'll try to fix that at some point, you can see all the credits of everyone who worked on it, I think. It's really fascinating for me to kind of like go be able to look back and say, like, oh, I forgot that this person like really helped out. And like people's names are on it, kind of like movie credits. Again, I'm just lifting this all from movies, but kind of like movie credits where like, I want people to feel part of the family. Employees definitely, but like it's definitely created kinship with people because there's a few people that I gave the coin to and they were like surprised because they were obviously grateful, but they're like, I didn't realize that like that conversation that kind of like wasn't important to me, like literally change how you thought about things. And it's such a nice way to, because I think you've probably had people who changed the way you think about things.
Oh, yeah.
I have. And like, I don't always say thank you, or I don't even sometimes realize I have to say thank you or realize that they changed my life. And this has been a really nice way to kind of like build a extended family of ReadMe people, ReadMe being my company, but extended family of ReadMe people. And yeah, I'm just really glad that I do it.
I love that idea, both from a business perspective and from a company level, but also from a personal level. You could do it as well. It's super cool. Does anyone ever get more than one coin, or once they've impacted, they have the coin, they're number 8 or whatever, and that's that? I'm just curious how you do that.
Yeah, so that's I think that's kind of one of the, like I said, there's a lot of different ways that you can thank people. Like you can give someone a bonus or a raise. The thing I like about the challenge coin in concept is that it's very flat. There's no, it's chronological, of course, but it's very flat in the sense that you can't get 2 or 3 of them. Like no one's has more or less. Like it's a very
Right.
equaling.
Once you have it, you're in the club.
Exactly. And I kind of like that. I like, there's a lot of ways that, people are on different levels. And I like that this is just a very Boolean, you're in or you're not in type situation. I think it's more, I think it's more meaningful. Like we do different things, like, for people's like 1-year anniversary, 2-year anniversary, we do different things. But I really like the concept of being like just a very leveling. That's what drew me to it. It was like, he didn't just give it to the actors, the movie stars. He gave it to everyone. It was very much like, I have the same coin that Beyonce has, or I have the same coin that, or Robert Downey Jr. has, that kind of mindset.
Yeah, that's very cool. And I'm assuming, right, if you're in more than one movie, you'd end up with a couple coins.
Of course, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But the idea of not just recognition, but closeness, I'm not sure if that's the right word, or intimacy that you get by being a part of something bigger. And I think the number is actually key to this, because it really shows kind of where you are in the journey, not just,
exactly.
I don't know. There's something about, I'm not sure I can articulate it yet, but there's something about the number that I think really cements the whole thing.
Yeah. I mean, let's say that ReadMe becomes a, billion-dollar company, like, and you looking back, like it's going to be really great for the people who believed in me really early on and helped early on to be able to say like, oh, I've got a coin that says number 4 on it. Yeah. Exactly. Whereas like someone who has 100 or 112 or 400 or 1,000, like we haven't gotten to those numbers yet, but hopefully we will. I don't want it to take away from being special, but like, you're right. There is a hierarchy at the end of the day. And that hierarchy is kind of like,
and that's okay. And I still think that if I got number 1,010, I'd be still pretty excited, because then I'm a part of a really big group.
Exactly.
Of people. So I think it's just as powerful, just a different kind of story or a different recognition that goes along with it. So I'm glad you shared that, because I've already put into my little Google search for coming back to challenge coins so that it's there when I'm done.
Well, feel free to follow up with me later if you need like a little help getting it set up, but they're surprisingly cheap to get done. They're easy to get done. I just love the concept.
No, I think it's absolutely brilliant. And I really do, to what you were saying, really see the value in not just a one-on-one recognition, but in really creating a community. So I have to imagine the people on that movie set felt like they were one with one mission of trying to get this movie done, because they all had this coin, this thing that kind of bonded them together.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it's a cool, and movies are a little bit different than startups because they're a little more, contained and things like that. But I still think the metaphor was great.
Yeah, no, I still think it works. And I think it works if you're a team in a large company, or if you're a large company. I mean, I think it applies all the way around. And frankly, if you're a large company, you want everybody in your company, from the janitor up to the CEO, feeling like they're part of that company and doing their best, right? Exactly. We can't afford to have people slacking. So, so the last thing I wanted to ask you about, and I think this probably speaks a lot to your leadership style too, is the no guilt policy to increase productivity. And I just have to tell you, the minute I read that, I was like, I've got to ask, like, I cannot run out of time to ask about this because I walk around with a ton of guilt around productivity for a million reasons. So tell me more about this.
Yeah, so I'm in the office right now because that's where my mic is, but no one else is here because we do work from home Wednesdays, for example. And we're lucky that I work at a tech company, and people are a certain level of self-aware and self-starterness and all that. Clearly, you can't do work from home Wednesday if you work at a restaurant because you need to be there. Like, we're very lucky that you can work from anywhere and stuff like that. But,
right, with what you do, yeah.
Yeah, but I have the most formative book I ever read was a book called, there's actually 2 books by the same authors, and they're very similar, Rework and Getting Real. Are you familiar with either of those?
Yeah,
they're by a company called Basecamp. They used to be called 37 Signals.
I use Basecamp, yeah.
Yep.
I love it.
And and the reason you love it is because of the kind of thought that went into it. And I just love the books they write. And the books are about a lot of different things. They're about the product and how to build a product, but they're also about how to build a culture. And they make a really strong case for them being very intertwined and all that. And very rarely will you read a book that's like both very profound on a product level and profound on a how to build a company culture.
True.
Anyway,
Yeah.
so they are a big proponent, almost too far to a certain extent, but that's their job. They're supposed to be a little radical about it. The proponent of kind of like, the more like it doesn't. They also have another book that I don't. It wasn't as formative for me, but like it's called "Doesn't Have to Be Crazy," and that kind of sums up a lot of the stuff. Like I work at a startup. I started a startup. I've worked at bad startups where I would work till like 3 a.m. and go home. I have to get there at 8 in, and like it's not worth it. I wasn't doing my best work. I was just kind of crazy.
It burned you out.
Exactly. Like you lose sight because you have like, instead of 40 hours, you have 80 hours of work to do, or of work that you can do. And like, you start doing things that aren't important. You start just like, you drink too much of this Kool-Aid, and you want to drink a little bit of the Kool-Aid, but like you just get a little burnt out and stuff like that. And I think that one of the biggest benefits of ReadMe is that we have awesome people who do awesome work, but at no point do I expect people to prove that they're working really hard by, working the longest hours or working on nights and weekends? Because let's say that I start working nights and weekends, and don't tell anyone, but like I do, but I don't make a big show of it. If I'm working nights and weekends and everyone feels like they have to work nights and weekends, and like, it
becomes the culture.
Exactly. And I don't want that to be the culture. I want everyone to work really hard and do the best work they can when they're in the office, but I want them to go have lives. And, one of the ways that that's kind of manifested itself is that we've been around for 5 years, and like our retention is insanely good for a tech company. Like people last tech companies for like 2 years, and like we have insane retention. And I credit that to the fact that, we treat it as a really good job, and we do amazing, awesome work. And, it's not that I haven't had to talk to people and be like, okay, this is not working. But I think that, if someone's just like, fuck, I don't know if I can swear on the podcast, but like, fuck, I can't work today. Like I just am not feeling it. Then like, it doesn't help anyone if they sit there and try to work, because they're gonna be miserable. Everyone's gonna be miserable. And
the work output's gonna be crap.
Yeah, they can't happen every day, but like, go take a walk or go, do laundry and something and come back in an hour. Like, don't feel like you have to be sitting there like forcing yourself, because then you're just pretending to work, and that doesn't make anyone happy. So like I said, it only works though, my company can make this a policy, but it only works if everyone treats it fairly and all that. Like if someone takes that and is like, well, I'm never going to work, then that brings everyone down. So you kind of do need to make sure you hire people that, don't take advantage of this. And that's actually really hard to do as well. But I think we've done a good job of kind of giving people a lot of ability to, manage themselves. And in return, they're expected to actually do that and to do good work. And it's tough. It doesn't scale. It can't work at every company. Not every company can do that. We're lucky that we're at the stage, size, and have hired people where we haven't had to like be like, okay, guys, like
we need to have a talk about this.
Yeah. This isn't working. And it's taken tweaks, stuff like that. But yeah, it's mostly gone really well.
Do you think from a leadership perspective, that takes a willingness to let go of control? Because you're not, in the very, very beginning, and whether you're on a team and like you're doing all the work and then your team grows, or you're like, you have a company that you're actually growing. So either way, in the beginning, you're kind of doing all of it. Yes. And then over time, right, you're hiring people, hopefully the right people, to do the right things. But the kind of this no guilt policy of productivity really, I would have to imagine it. Like I can envision myself. We're remote and we come together every week, but we also work remotely too, because first of all, I have people all over the country, and second, that's the type of company we built because that's how we work best.
Yeah.
And frankly, I travel all the time, so why would I force people to be in the office when I'm barely there? Like, It just doesn't seem fair. But for me anyway, I had to let go of control, and that was actually hard.
Yeah, it's incredibly impossible. I've been lucky that I have had good managers, but I've been even luckier that I've had really shitty managers. And that's kind of helped me realize that the best way to get good work out of people is to give up control. Like I said before, like if you want people to be creative, if you want people to be creative, you can't be like, all right, here is exactly what I want, go do it. Like that leaves zero room for creativity or interesting new stuff. And for me, I don't know if this is true for you, but my background is programming and design, which, for those, it's either writing code or like, moving pixels around in Photoshop or whatever kids are using these days, Sketch or Figma or whatever. It's been a while. And that's very tangible. I would sit down, I would do something, I would get a result. And I knew what 8 hours of work felt like. I've had bad days and good days when I'm programming, but like vaguely, like I knew what like a productive day felt like. And now that I'm running a company and I don't get to do those tangible things, it's sometimes really difficult to at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. when I'm leaving to think like, did I actually do anything today?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I don't have anything off my checklist. Huh?
Yeah. And I'm tired and I spent a lot of time doing stuff, but like, did I actually do anything? And that's one of the hardest things to switch from like being just like an IC to actually being a manager is you're no longer, it's hard. It's so hard. And I don't know. I've been really lucky that it's kind of gone pretty smoothly for me. I think, like I said, I attribute it to like having managers that were way too overbearing. To CEOs that would make us work on weekends. And I had a CEO, my first startup, that used to say he would make us work on holidays and weekends and be like,
it's horrible.
This is how we get ahead of the competition. And like in hindsight, we didn't have competition. I don't know who we were getting ahead of, and the company ran a business, and I didn't get to go out, on weekends and stuff. And it was fine. I was young and I loved it, and it was great, and like I don't regret it. But it's no way to live. And so I don't know. Like it's still a company, and like I don't want anyone to get the impression that people are showing up and just like hanging out and doing escape rooms and doing nothing. But like it's there's a lot of psychology, and I'm not going to try to start studying psychology, that says like you only get like 4 or 5 productive hours a day. And there are superhuman people. Like you could look at someone like Steve Jobs or Jack Dorsey or Elon Musk, and like aside from whether or not you think that they're doing a good job or you agree with them or whatever, or you idolize them, like
they're machines.
They're just like superhumans, and like that's not who you should want to be. That's an impossible level for the average human being. And I want to like I stress that with my company too, like where I love my company, I love what we're building, but at the end of the day, what matters more is people being happy and fulfilled and enjoying stuff. And we're still running a company, we still have to make money, we still have to build something. I still have a vision that I love. Like I desperately want APIs to be easier to use, to kind of like democratize how people are able to build stuff. APIs are the reason that so many people have been able to build so many companies when their background isn't in CS, or they don't have the money or the funding to do it from the start. But that being said, like we're still just building a website, and I want people to kind of make sure that they see that and they realize that, and they can still enjoy their lives and enjoy stuff, and like not look back in their 20s and 30s and be like, oh, I kind of wasted them doing something. So that's kind of how I look at building a company.
Well, I think what's important about that, there's a lot of layers that are important about that, but I think part of what's important about that is the recognition that you have to invest in your people to grow your company. Mm-hmm. So it's not that you're just like, oh, we're all about lifestyle because we're in the Bay Area and, we all bugger off and like go drink some microbrews at 4:00 every day. It's not like that. It's that people are allowed to have the ups and downs of mental energy and to kind of go with that a little bit. And I will tell you on a personal note, I get up at 4 a.m. Every day, and I'm not superhuman, so this is not a story of how I'm like Elon Musk. Believe me, it's the opposite. I go to a CrossFit class at 5 a.m., so I have to get up, have my coffee, let my dog out. But I start work the minute I get back because I'm up. Mm-hmm. So at like 6 a.m, I'm answering some emails, I'm getting some stuff out the door, and then by 3 o'clock, I crash pretty much every day.
Yep.
And I used to feel really guilty about it because I thought, oh, I got more work to do. It's not even the end of the day. People are trying to reach me, all the things that go along with I should be working right now, to your kind of earlier story. But I really kind of learned to embrace the fact that, that's not my work time. Like that's the time I need to kind of bugger off and go for a walk or, run an errand, or just I need to decompress for a little bit and mentally disengage. And then I can come back to it and actually go well into the evening if I don't have my kiddos that day. So, but it took me a while to realize that. And I actually started tracking my hours. And that's how I realized, oh, I'm still working 10 hours a day. Yeah. Why am I like so hard on myself?
You're fine. Like if you force yourself to work past that 3 p.m. to like 7 p.m., you feel like you have to, then the next day you're gonna have a shitty day and you're gonna get nothing done. And it's happy medium. Like you said, like no one's here like playing ping pong or like, drinking at 4 p.m. or anything
Right.
like that.
It's not about that.
Yeah. Well, like people are really working. Like if you came to the office, like you'd see people, not today because I was working from home because we do work from Wednesdays, but you'd see people like working hard, working late. But also you'd see one person who left because, their dog was sick. And like, who am I to say, no, the hours you're in the office are this to this when like their dog's sick and they just want to like, be home and work, but like watch them. And like when you treat people like adults, which they are, then you get the same respect back. And I think that's really important for building a company that's sustainable.
Yeah, well, what I just to kind of sum it all up, appreciate about what you're saying, Greg, is that, and I think this really kind of speaks to the type of culture that you've built and are building as you grow, is that it really is about coming from a place of trusting people to do their best and be their best. And then you can work backwards from there. So if someone's not living up to that, you can have that conversation. But what a much better place to work at, and what a better place to be from a leader's perspective, to come at it from the perspective of trust. Mm-hmm. And I think when it comes to, your team being innovative too, it's a lot easier to be innovative when you're trusted. And every time I talk to teams where there's a lack of innovation, when you start to dig deep, there's a lack of trust at the base of all of it. And because people are afraid to speak up, they're afraid to do what they need to do. They're afraid to think a little bit differently, to our earlier conversation. But it seems like you come from that place of like, I'm going to trust you. You can prove me wrong if you want to, but I'm going to trust you to start and we'll go from there.
Yeah. And people have unfortunately proved me wrong.
Of course.
But I always want to start. Yeah. But I always, unlike the military, to kind of like end this back where we started, like unlike the military, I don't want people to conform and then get mad at them for not doing it. I want to kind of give them the space to be their own people and prove me right. And then, it's kind of the exact opposite of kind of how I spent my childhood, but I'm much happier this way.
All right. So before we go, 2 questions. One is, where can people go to learn more and connect?
Definitely. So Twitter is G Koberger. That's G Koberger. Gkoberger.com. You can listen to my website. Speaking of things being outside the box, I try to make my website as kind of quirky as possible. And pretty much G Koberger anywhere you want to follow me. My company's ReadMe, ReadMe.com. And those are the big places to find me.
Awesome. What's your final piece of advice for innovators on Launch Street?
Ooh, that's a good question. You tricked me up with the last question.
It's the Oprah at the end, the Oprah couch question.
I think that the biggest thing is that early on, nobody's going to support you. They'll maybe like kind of help you out or be there for you a little bit here or there. But like, I think people sometimes feel like I'm going to build this thing and, they're just going to get a ton of people who love it and just push through. And then you'll slowly start to see like, as you actually build stuff and do stuff, people will just slowly start to come around and like be your biggest advocates. And I think that one thing I may have done, and maybe you did as well, and maybe, you disagree, but I think like, it was weird where like I wanted a lot of like groundswell before I like wrote my first line of code. I wanted like investors, or I wanted like employees, or I wanted like all this stuff. And like the best way to get started with anything is just to get started. And then it's so rare for people to actually get started, to actually build something cool or weird or unique or interesting, that like once it happens, you just naturally attract the people you want to attract. And it doesn't work the opposite way. You can't attract the people first. Some people can, and there's ways that happens, but like if you want to do something, make something, build something, just do it. It's easy to make excuses. Kind of just stop making excuses, get started, and see what happens.
I love that advice. You're so right. You really got to get out there and start doing it, and not, to your point, not worry about the people. They'll come.
Yep, exactly.
Greg, thank you so much. This was fantastic. I learned so much, and I can't wait the next time I'm back home in the Bay Area to try a startup escape. I'm going to get my family to do it with me.
Let me know. And I'd love to have you do my startup. It's startupescape.com. That was the one last place you can find my stuff on. But yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for hanging with us on Inside Launch Street. If you know someone that is truly ready to unlock their innovation advantage, have them join you on Launch Street. Discover your innovation advantage. Build a team of high-performing innovators and ignite ideas and solutions that create massive impact. GOTO, launchstreet.com. Remember, innovators, if you don't take the leap, somebody else will.